My name is Eric Ross, and I'm going to be discussing the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX, from the crashes that caused it to be grounded, what caused the crashes, the impacts of the grounding, what they're doing to fix the issue today, and then also my own opinion on the matter. There are two major crashes that led to the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX. First, there was Lion Air Flight 610, and then the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. In my final draft, I'm going to go into more detail about the flight that was the night before the Lion Air flight, and then also some of what the pilots experienced just before the plane crashed. After the first crash, the plane was not grounded at all. Once a second crash occurred, though, countries and airlines immediately started grounding the planes. In fact, in just 3 days, all of the planes that had been sold in the world were grounded. One thing that is interesting about the whole grounding process, though, is that the US waited until 3 days after the crash to ground it, which made them one of the last world powers to ground the plane. At the end of all the investigation, it was decided that the MCAS system is what caused the crashes. So first, the MCAS was installed on the 737 MAX to help the plane fly like older models of the 737, which was a requirement for what they promised in their business plan, and that pilots would need minimal training, and to do that, it would have to fly the same as old models to get the same certificate. Some of the issues right away seen with the MCAS is, one, the FAA did not mention it in reports about the changes from previous models, which was concerning because they even mentioned the seatbelts were different. It was talked about in risk reports though, but it was not expected to be as strong as it actually was in the plane. It was also rated as a hazardous system, which means it needs certain fallback plans and redundancies, which it did not have. And I'll go into more depth about all of that on my final draft. The grounding had the biggest impact on three key stakeholders: the FAA, airlines, and Boeing. The FAA's reputation will take a big hit, and I'll discuss more about why in my final version. Airlines were affected immediately from the grounding. They had to cancel hundreds of flights and cost millions of dollars in revenue, which I'll discuss more in my final version. And then there was Boeing, who was hurt the most. They're going to have to pay to fix the MCAS system, they have to compensate the airlines for some of the revenue that they cost them, and then they're also at risk of losing $30 billion in orders that airlines may cancel for the 737 MAX. Boeing will have to face multiple legal battles due to the crashes and the grounding. They'll face off with any airline that has the 737 MAXs and is looking for compensation for the revenue they lost due to the grounding. On top of this, Boeing will have to face wrongful death lawsuits from the families of the victims of the crashes looking for compensation for the loss of their loved ones. Since this is such a recent issue, they're still in the process of trying to fix the mistakes they made. The FAA has said they're committing more inspectors to the evaluation process of type certificates and plane inspection to ensure that they don't make the same mistake they made with the 737 MAX. Boeing has a lot higher stakes in what they need to fix. They have a $1 million business plan with the 737 MAX, and they're at risk of losing all of that. They first needed to rework the software so it would actually work properly. They also decided they're actually going to include the MCAS in manuals, which is really interesting that they didn't have that from the beginning. They are currently working towards regaining the 737 MAX's registration and hope that that will be done by August 3rd of 2019. Boeing is at fault for pretty much everything and should have to pay up in every way that they're going to be expected to. I think that they don't deserve to win any of the suits against the airlines because they screwed the airlines out of their money by giving them a plane that was ineffective and truly not flight worthy. They also screwed over the airlines by failing to tell the pilots about the MCAS system, which was really a big concern for a lot of pilots in the process because they were complaining a lot about, oh, what is this? Like, we never heard about this, and then it activated in flight to the extreme and they didn't know what to actually do. And also, Boeing should compensate the families of the victims of the crashes because it ultimately is Boeing's fault for the crashes and for the deaths of all those people. The FAA carries some responsibility too, because their inspections failed and they let the system slide, which was not safe. They let it slide in a sense that they okayed a weaker version and then allowed a more powerful version, which ultimately caused the crashes to be installed. And that is the case of the Boeing 737 MAX.